Hey guys, tonight we slip quietly into a time when receipts didn't print with annoying beeps or get left crumpled in your glove compartment. Instead, they were shaped by hand dried in the sun and sometimes lasted thousands of years literally. Welcome to ancient Mesopotamia, where the Tigris and Euphrates rivers split the land like twin veins, and the air is thick with reed smoke, baking bread and arguments over how many goats someone owes the temple. You find yourself barefoot in the early morning dust of Uruk, around 3200 BCE. The town square is already buzzing. Traders barter loudly, baskets of barley sway in the wind, and somewhere a child is crying because his clay tablet cracked again. You try not to step in donkey droppings. This is the cradle of civilization, but it's loud, dusty, and smells suspiciously like fermented fish. You wander past rows of market stalls stacked with pottery-dried figs and curious-looking jars of thick brown paste. Date molasses. Muddy honey unclear. You don't taste it. Just off the market in the shaded colonnade of a low mud brick building sit a few men in linen kilts. They're hunched over wide, flat trays of wet clay. These are the scribes, and their job to invent bureaucracy. Lucky you. One of them is scratching lines with a stick. You lean over his shoulder. Tiny wedge shapes march across the clay in rows. It looks more like bird tracks than writing, but this, believe it or not, is where it all begins. The earliest form of writing, cuneiform, starts as a tool for accounting. Not poetry, not love letters, just bean counting. Or barley in this case. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is over there. I love seeing how far this sleepy little community stretches. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. The scribe dips his reed stylus into water, then presses it into the clay again. You notice a pattern. Triangles, wedges, sometimes a squiggle. That one apparently means sheep. You nod like you understand. He grunts. It's not personal. Most scribes don't love spectators. Across from him, another man is rolling a cylindrical stamp onto a lump of clay. It leaves behind an intricate design, an animal, a god, maybe a geometric pattern. These are cylinder seals, a kind of Mesopotamian ID card meets fingerprint meets company logo. And they are everywhere. A woman in a fine wool robe approaches with a servant carrying 2 jars. She mutters something about temple taxes. The scribe jots it all down, amount, name, date, seal. A receipt is born. She leaves satisfied. You're still trying to figure out how many symbols that took. Historians still argue whether these early receipts were mostly religious offerings, market transactions, or bureaucratic checklists. But one thing is certain, writing was invented because humans didn't trust each other. The moment people began living in large groups, someone had to track who owed what to whom. And humans being humans, they needed proof. You watch another scribe smooth fresh clay onto a plank. This one's for grain deliveries. Each line represents a different field. Your back already aches imagining carrying those sacks. But here's the quirky part: sometimes, instead of writing it out, they'd use small clay tokens, each shaped to represent sheep jars or bundles of barley, and then bake them inside a hollow clay ball, like a prehistoric accounting Kinder egg. Later, those tokens were replaced by symbols drawn directly onto tablets. Faster, more compact, less likely to be eaten by someone's goat. You squint as the sun creeps higher. The smell of flatbread drifts by. A boy nearby is sweeping up broken tablet shards like it's a normal chore. And it is. Mistakes happen. Deals break. The clay tells all. Mesopotamian scribes might not have invented drama, but they absolutely invented the paperwork that followed it. A scribe reaches for a new slab of clay, dipping his fingers into a pot of water to keep it soft. He looks exhausted. Probably because he's already logged 6 tax complaints, 3 temple donations, and at least one bizarre goat custody dispute. You lean against the warm mud brick wall and let your eyelids droop. The day rolls forward. A potter shouts about someone underpaying. A priest demands an audit, and somewhere nearby someone drops a tablet. With a satisfying splat into the dirt, you glance over. The scribe sighs. Another one bites the dust. Still, there's something peaceful about it all. The quiet discipline of documentation, the methodical press of stylus into clay. In a world without paper, ink, or Wi-Fi, these people were already keeping records that would outlast empires. A chill breeze flutters your tunic as the shadows lengthen. The scribe beside you finally stretches, cracks his back, and lays the tablet out to dry. Another receipt complete. You wonder if anyone will ever read it again. Spoiler, yes. Some modern archaeologist probably already has. You wake, or rather drift deeper into the sun-baked world of scribes and styluses. The air is drier now as the late morning heat rises off the rooftops like steam from a too-hot teacup. You're still in Uruk, but the energy has shifted. Morning trade is calmed, and now the scribes are settling into their real task, making sense of the chaos that just walked through the market. Or at least pretending to. You crouch next to a young scribe in training. His brow is furrowed, his stylus trembling slightly as he presses it into a small, damp slab. You expect something poetic, maybe a hymn to the goddess Inanna, or a tale of some epic warrior. Instead, it says a list of lentils. Not even good lentils, just quantities. 4 measures here, 6 there, all tracked meticulously. You chuckle to yourself. Welcome to the origins of paperwork. Turns out the first written words in history weren't about glory, they were about groceries. The stylus itself is unimpressive. A hollow reed, one end trimmed to a flat wedge. With it, he presses triangles, lines, and dots into the clay with deliberate care. This is cuneiform, named for the Latin cunis, meaning wedge. Mesopotamian scribes weren't drawing pictures, they were sculpting meaning. The system didn't start this way, though. Originally, people tried to draw actual things, pictographs of goats' jugs and baskets. But then they realized that gets messy fast. So they simplified. Bent a goat's head into 3 strokes, a field into 2. Eventually, the pictures disappeared, and in their place abstract marks, symbols, and the first real writing system on Earth. Historians still argue whether writing developed gradually from those little clay accounting tokens we saw earlier, or whether someone just got fed up and started scribbling. Either way, by 3000 BCE, it was in full swing, and you sleepy time traveler are here to watch it happen. The clay is temperamental. If it's too wet, the marks smear. Too dry and it cracks. You watch as the boy mocks a mistake, groans, and tosses the slab into a growing pile of nope. One scribe nearby has already gone through 5 drafts of the same barley receipt. That's not dedication, it's occupational suffering. But it's not all grump and grind. There's an art to it too. Stylus angles matter. Stroke pressure varies. There's even a kind of rhythm. You start to notice the cadence, press, flick, pause, press. It's like watching someone take notes on a cosmic cash register. Someone walks past trailing a scent of oil and old parchment. He's a senior scribe, judging by the way everyone pretends to be busy when he glances their way. He carries a tablet the size of a small tray filled edge to edge with marks. You peek. It's a shipping manifest. 10 jars of beer, 3 bags of emmer wheat, 1 rather unfortunate donkey. You raise an eyebrow. He shrugs. It was a long trip. This is when it hits you receipts weren't just receipts. They were records of trust or lack thereof. In a world where everything had to be remembered, or else it made sense that people eventually decided to outsource memory to mud. The edges of the clay tablet are beveled, smoothed with care. Someone stamps it with a seal, probably the client's. Now it's official, notarized, No returns, no refunds, but at least it's real. Here's a weird little detail for you. Sometimes these tablets were wrapped in more clay like a shell and sealed shut. That outer layer served as a tamper-proof envelope. You could only break it to check what was inside, usually in court temple, or if someone really didn't trust their neighbor, which was often. You wander to another part of the courtyard where sun-dried tablets rest in neat rows. Some will be stored in baskets, others shelved in little clay cubbies. A few will be recycled, smashed down, and remade into new slabs. Mesopotamian data management, efficient and environmentally friendly. There's a tablet with tiny, almost impossible writing. You squint. It's a shipment of fish over 2,000 counted and recorded with care. The scribe proudly tells you he wrote the whole thing without breaking his stylus. You applaud softly. He beams like he just published a novel. Of course, not everyone was thrilled about the rise of writing. Some priests claimed that relying on clay would make people lazy, forgetful. Why remember what you can record, they grumbled. Sound familiar? But change one. Always does. And soon, cuneiform was everywhere. Temples, markets, homes, even schools. Schools. We'll get to those soon. For now, the boy beside you finally finishes his lentil tablet. He wipes the sweat from his brow, holds it up to the sun, and sets it gently on a drying rack. He might be 10 years old, but he just did something that 4,000 years from now, an archaeologist will dig up, photograph, and file in a museum. All to say, every receipt tells a story, even the boring ones. You stretch. A breeze picks up, rustling the date palms nearby. You could swear one of them just dropped a fruit with a soft thunk. A goat bleats somewhere in the distance, and the sound of styluses scratching into clay carries you further into the day. Not bad for a civilization that hadn't even figured out iron yet. The sun climbs higher, turning the market square into a slow-cooked stew of clay dust, donkey breath, and someone's regrettable fish delivery. But there's a smell rising above it, all yeasty, sour, and weirdly comforting. Beer, and not just any beer. This is the lifeblood of the Mesopotamian workforce. You follow your nose to a shady corner where enormous clay jugs rest in rows, their mouths plugged with straw and beeswax. A woman ladles some out into a bowl. It's thick brown and honestly looks like someone blended bread. You politely pretend not to gag. Here's the twist. This isn't a refreshment stand, it's payroll. The Sumerians weren't exactly handing out coins or direct deposits. Instead, workers, especially those building temples, canals, or city walls, were paid in beer and bread. And how did you make sure no one claimed an extra ration? You guessed it, receipts. A scribe nearby sits cross-legged beside a temple storehouse, pressing symbols into clay faster than a modern barista punches espresso orders. One stylus for entries, one tired elbow. And always that look of, I did not study 12 years just to track this guy's daily buzz. A man approaches with a smirk. He worked yesterday, claims he's due 2 jars. The scribe checks his tablet. 1 jar. A loud argument follows. It's mostly about barley content, of course it is. Eventually the seal comes out. Pressed into the clay, the man walks away with his sloshy payment. You stay behind, sipping the faint air of yeast and salt. The scribe groans. You get the feeling this isn't his first ration dispute of the day. Historians still argue whether beer was truly a luxury or just the daily fuel of the working poor. What's certain is that it was standard payment for thousands of laborers. And documenting every jug gourd and sippy bowl, that's what gave cuneiform its staying power. You glance down at a tablet mid-drying. It's for 20 workers, 20 beer rations, canal work, 3 days. There's a drawing of what might be a fish or a boot. Artistic ambiguity is strong in this one. Another tablet nearby lists missing tools, a hammer, a basket, a measuring rope. A fringe theory suggests these kinds of receipts evolved into inventory systems that temples used for internal audits. You smirk. Of course, even the ancients had, where's the damn shovel paperwork? A new delivery arrives, barley sacks of it. A boy scribbles into a waxy-looking ledger. Wait, that's not wax, it's just very fine clay-burnished smooth, portable, polished, and perfect for fast writing. You lean over. He's entering amounts, date, and origin. Everything that comes in and out gets logged. Even the ratty card it arrived on. You step into the storehouse. It's cool, dark, and filled with rows of tall clay jars sealed with reeds. A strong scent of grain and fermented air hits you. You'd swear there's a pigeon nesting somewhere up in the beams. But what really draws your eye is the shelf of small tablets stacked like thick crackers, each one a record of movement. Out 2 sacks barley, to temple kitchen, witness Lugal, al-Ideen. It's bureaucratic bliss, but here's the fringe bit. Some tablets use shorthand symbols that only make sense to certain scribes. Historians argue whether these were early forms of internal code or just lazy abbreviations. You'd bet on both. A priest walks by muttering about under-recorded donations. The scribe grits his teeth. You know that look. It's the face of someone who's absolutely done with divine micromanagement. There's a tablet on the floor with a deep scratch through it. You ask. Turns out it was voided. The offering didn't arrive. Or it did, but someone else claimed it. Either way, the record is canceled. Like crossing out a checkbook entry if that checkbook weighed 5 pounds and broke your toe when dropped. You wander out again into the heat. In the shade, a few off-duty workers sip their wages with clay straws from shared jars. They nod as you pass. One raises an eyebrow like he's asking, "You on shift yet?" You shake your head. You're just visiting this payroll nightmare. At the edge of the plaza, a foreign merchant argues with a guard. Something about forged payment tablets. You crane your neck. The guard is holding a tablet and turning it over and over, inspecting the seal. You can practically hear the future courtroom drama forming. Here's your quirky detail of the hour. Some temples actually color-coded their tablets coated in red or black wash to indicate urgency or ownership. Historians still debate what these colors officially meant, but one thing's clear: ancient filing systems were more stylish than your desktop folders. The sun is high now, and the city hums with hunger. A food vendor pushes past you, carrying a tray of what might be roasted lizard or overcooked eggplant. You don't ask. You sit back under a palm awning beside the tired scribes. One of them yawns. Another jokes that if he records one more jar of beer, he's going to drink it himself. Everyone laughs a little too hard. Occupational hazards after all. You glance at a nearby shelf stacked with hundreds of drying tablets. Thousands of hours, endless transactions, all captured in mud. And here you are, nestled among the numbers and symbols, watching history calculate itself, one beer-soaked receipt at a time. By now, the scent of roasted barley and sour mash has baked into your clothes. You've followed the trail of receipts from the market to the beer rations, but now it's time to step somewhere quieter, somewhere holier. You drift toward the temple district where the air shifts. Less shouting, more murmurs. Less beer, more incense. And a whole lot more paperwork. The ziggurat looms in the distance like a giant sun-baked layer cake. Terraced, massive, and humming with quiet authority. You step through a gate flanked by stone lions with that classic "I dare you" expression and find yourself inside a shaded courtyard. Here, the economy and the divine blend together because in ancient Mesopotamia, gods had balance sheets. The temple isn't just a place of worship. It's the city's beating bureaucratic heart. Offerings pour in from the people. Grain sheep, dates, textiles, and the priests in all their linen-robed solemnity keep track of everything. You peek into a side room and nearly trip over a basket of goat hooves. That's one way to start an audit. A pair of scribes are seated cross-legged in front of low wooden benches, clay tablets spread around them like messy tax forms. A line of villagers waits to report their offerings. One woman brings a bundle of dyed wool. Another carries a squirming duck. She keeps trying to quiet it like it's a fussy child. It isn't working. Each offering is inspected, weighed, categorized, and of course recorded. The scribes press symbols into clay with precise flicks of the wrist. Styluses dance. You try to make out the signs: duck woman's name date, purpose, prayer for husband's health maybe, and seal. Historians still argue whether temple accounting was purely economic, or if it also served as a spiritual contract between the donor and the gods. But one thing's not up for debate: these priests would have made terrifying IRS agents. You wander deeper. In another chamber, shelves of tablets line the walls. Some are old, cracked, and half-faded. Others look freshly dried. Each one documents something offered to the temple or borrowed from it. Yes, borrowed. People sometimes took food or tools from temple stockpiles with the promise to return or repay. Naturally, it all went on record. You pass a scribe squinting at a particularly long tablet. He mutters about someone returning fewer fish than they borrowed. His face is pure suspicion. Ancient receipts weren't just receipts, they were proof. And in a culture where divine favor was tied to honesty, having your offering paperwork in order wasn't just good practice, it might have kept your house from flooding. You peek over his shoulder. He's tallying quantities, recording sources, and adding little notes like poor quality or missing tail feathers. There's even a fringe theory-worthy line in one corner, a symbol that some scholars believe means possibly cursed. You shuffle back a step. Nearby, a temple accountant counts rings of dried onions. Another holds up a chunk of copper and taps it, listening for hollowness. Everything is examined with the intensity of someone checking return policies on Black Friday. And yes, some of these temples had receipts so detailed, they even tracked who received the offering on the divine side. You catch a glimpse of a cracked tablet that reads something along the lines of 2 measures barley for Enlil's favor. If that doesn't work, they probably just doubled the amount the next day. A bored-looking guard leans against a pillar. You ask him how often someone tries to cheat the system. He just smirks and jerks a thumb toward a clay box nearby filled with disputed tablets. It's half full. Ancient audit queue. Your eyelid twitches in sympathy. Outside, temple servants hustle past with trays of goods. One drops a small jar which shatters, spilling something oily and fragrant. The head priest barks something in a language that sounds suspiciously like an ancient version of seriously. You slip into the archive room. It's cooler here, the walls thick and windowless. Baskets of tablets line the corners. There's one that lists every chicken donated over a 4-month stretch. Another just tracks date deliveries, literally pages of 7 bunches, 6 bunches, 3 bunches, possibly fermented. You settle near a scribe who's copying an older tablet onto a fresh slab. It's a backup, just in case the original cracks or the corner with the important part breaks off. This is how Mesopotamians handled data redundancy. Forget the cloud, these folks had shelf space and sore backs. One tablet catches your eye. The writing is neat, careful. It tracks a noble's offerings across 5 years. Each spring, a large amount of beer oil and barley for the goddess Ishtar. The scribe beside you chuckles. Always in spring, he says, just before the tax inspections. You grin. Some habits are eternal. You step back into the main courtyard just in time to hear a heated exchange. A man claims he donated 10 jars of oil. The scribe's record says 8. Accusations fly. Out comes the seal. They check the markings, compare strokes, look for fraud. Eventually, it's settled. Someone misread the dateline. It was last month's donation. And just like that, a crisis is averted by a few well-placed wedges in clay. The temple bells ring in the distance. You blink, realizing the sun has shifted again. The plaza outside is awash in golden light. Somewhere, a flute plays a sleepy melody. But here in the heart of the temple, the work never stops. Because even the gods, it seems, require receipts. You leave the temple complex with your head spinning from numbers gods and the suspiciously long inventory of onions. Outside, the air is warmer, softer, like it's being wrung through a damp cloth. You wander toward the residential quarter of the city where walls are lower, windows are smaller, and privacy is more of a suggestion than a right. It's quieter here. No priests barking about barley, no scribes muttering over duplicate tablets, just families, dogs, and the occasional runaway goose. You trail behind a man with a grizzled beard and a scroll of complaints. He's headed to a house where women are gathered under a grapevine-covered pergola, chatting in soft voices. In the center, seated on a cushion, is an older woman with silver threaded through her braids. She's holding a clay tablet like it's a baby chick, delicate but important. A marriage contract. You settle nearby, ears perked. This isn't temple business. This is personal. The bride-to-be is maybe 13. Her eyes are wide, her veil itchy. The groom is older, already owns sheepland, and the smug expression of someone who's never cleaned a stable. Their families have gathered to settle the terms dowry, bride price, who gets what, if the marriage fails, who keeps the goat. It's all being written down. The scribe records every item transferred between families. Linen sheets, a bronze bracelet, 5 jugs of oil, and yes, a goat named Dumuzi. They note conditions too. If the groom mistreats the bride, he forfeits the entire dowry. If she runs away, her family must repay the bride price. And if either party dies, the tablets sort that out too. Historians still argue whether these contracts empowered women or simply formalized their objectification. It depends on which tablet you read and whose side of the family you're on. A small boy arrives carrying 2-cylinder seals. They're passed between the fathers like trophies. Each man rolls his seal across the soft clay, stamping the agreement with his identity. No signature needed, just a perfect miniature masterpiece in relief. Like a wax seal and a credit card swipe had a very complicated baby. You peer at the symbols, the bride's name, the family's the terms. There's even a witness, probably that sleepy uncle in the corner, chewing dates like it's a sport. You want to scoff at the drama, but let's be real, prenups have always been a thing. You think modern in-laws are difficult. Imagine haggling over sheep weight as a measure of love. Nearby, a second scribe is preparing a duplicate tablet just in case. Marriages end. Contracts crack. Better to have proof when someone claims they were promised a second goat and didn't get it. Then someone mentions inheritance. The bride's younger brother perks up. You see the panic in his eyes. Will she get the family vineyard, will he? A furious whisper. War begins. The scribe sighs and starts a third tablet. These clay documents were legal binding and sometimes, though rarely, used in court. A judge would read them aloud, seal and all. It wasn't about trust. It was about tracking expectations before someone's cousin tried to burn down the grape arbor in revenge. Your quirky tidbit for today. Some of these family contracts even included emotional clauses. Things like, the husband shall not strike the wife without just cause, or the bride must honor her in-laws. Subjective, absolutely, but written down? You bet. You glance up as the couple-to-be stand stiffly. Their hands are joined for a moment. The older women ululate softly. The goat snorts, and the tablet is carried off to be dried, hardened, and placed in a family archive, aka a dusty box under someone's bed. You follow the scribe as he walks away. His satchel clinks with at least 5 more tablets. Birth records, debt, logs, a property lease, and something about a stolen blanket. It's not glamorous, but these documents are the glue of society. You pass a woman in the alley feeding a toddler sticky dates. She looks up, sighs, and mutters that she needs to update her will. Her sister took the jewelry. Again, another tablet is born. The sun softens into gold and laughter echoes from a nearby courtyard. Someone singing a lullaby. You press yourself into the shadows as a group of kids runs past one of them, carrying a chunk of dried clay like it's a toy. You squint. It might be someone's rental agreement. Oh well, historians have uncovered thousands of these domestic receipts. Some are heartbreakingly personal records of divorces, lost children, split inheritances. Others are mundane laundry disputes, borrowed shoes, overdue pottery returns. But together they tell a story not of kings or gods, but of ordinary people navigating love money and really stubborn goats. As twilight sneaks over the rooftops, you lean against a warm stone wall and feel it, the heartbeat of a civilization that recorded not just wars and treaties, but casseroles and breakups. Because long before spreadsheets, the Mesopotamians knew the truth. If it matters, you write it down. The sky melts into twilight, now bruised with lavender and copper, and the scent of cooking fires drifts through narrow alleyways. You follow your nose past chattering families, past a dog chewing something it probably shouldn't, until the world widens again right at the city gate. A caravan is arriving. Dust kicks up as camels plod forward, draped in jingling beads and scratchy sacks. Traders from distant lands call out greetings in a dozen dialects. The city pulses as it always has, with trade, with stories, with the slap of sandals on packed earth. You fix your eyes on one man in particular, a merchant named Ibisin. His robes are faded but clean. His ledger tablet is tucked under one arm like a holy book, and he's frowning so hard you can almost hear it. He doesn't trust anyone, which is fair considering he just dragged 12 jars of olive oil, 5 bolts of dyed wool, and a nervous-looking goat across 300 miles of scorching wilderness. And now he needs receipts. You fall into step behind him as he heads straight for the city's trade office, a low mud brick building by the eastern wall. Inside, it's organized chaos. Scribes sit behind worn benches, and runners dart between them like caffeinated ants. Everyone is shouting, everyone is sweaty, everyone has something to record. Ibisin unloads his tablet. It's coated in road dust, slightly chipped but legible. He slides it across to the nearest scribe like a gambler laying down cards. The scribe inspects it, mutters about proper seals, and fetches a second stylus. Time to transcribe. Every item Ibisin brought into the city gets logged: origin, quantity, condition, estimated value. He leans over the table, watching like a hawk. One wrong symbol, and his entire deal could unravel. His partner was shorted in Lagash last month because a scribe mistook barley for spelt. That poor guy's still eating soup. Historians still argue whether these merchant logs were standardized or adapted city to city. Some clay tablets show consistent sign order, while others are chaotic doodle bombs of regional style. If you think modern paperwork is inconsistent, try decoding 3 dialects of Sumerian math at once. You watch as the scribe carefully adds a symbol indicating no spoilage. That's important. If one jar leaks in transit, compensation shifts. The stakes are high, especially since the goat keeps eyeing the wool rolls like they're a snack. Beside you, another merchant is pleading about a damaged shipment of lapis lazuli. "It was whole when I packed it," he cries. The clerk gives him the ancient version of "not my problem" and waves him toward the dispute bench. Yup, there's a bench just for arguments. 3 men are already on it, shouting about who owes who a pig. You inch closer to Ibisin as the final lines are scratched in. His cylinder seal is produced and rolled across the bottom. One clean pass, a thing of beauty. The scribe sprinkles a little sand over the clay to keep it from smudging. Receipt complete. But wait, he's not done. Ibisin pulls out his copy of the transaction. That's right. Duplicates existed. His version is slightly smaller shaped to be easily tucked inside his satchel. It's pre-stamped and lightly dried, ready for an official to press their own seal and make it legal. It's a 2-tablet system, the Mesopotamian version of print customer copy. You can't help but marvel at the efficiency. No phones, no emails, just styluses, sun, and suspicious merchants keeping the economy running on pure paranoia. Here's a quirky bit for your collection. Some traveling merchants developed signature symbols embedded in their seals. Little extra dots or odd flourishes meant to prevent forgery. Think of it like sneaking a typo into your logo on purpose. Historians debate whether this was official policy or just good old-fashioned anxiety. Either way, it worked. Ibisen finally exhales. His paperwork is in order, his goods are recorded, and bonus, no one tried to scam him this time. He nods to the scribe, flips the clay receipt into his satchel, and starts barking orders to his porters. The goat is relieved. You follow the caravan to the warehouse district. Rows of low buildings, each stacked with amphora baskets and bundles. Guards patrol slowly, tapping the shafts of their spears on the stone. Each incoming shipment is matched against the trader's receipt. No match. No entry, no exceptions. Bureaucracy is the real gatekeeper here. Inside one warehouse, you see racks of tablets sorted by trader. It's like a public ledger except heavier. You run your fingers over one labeled milk deliveries your 6 months. Each week has a separate line. You wonder if someone skimmed a bit off the top. Probably. By lamplight, a clerk scratches new updates into the storage logs. One batch of dried figs arrived too early. Another came moldy. Both notes are recorded without mercy. The fruit may rot, but the record survives. The workers here speak in numbers. Barley to weight, ratios. Wool to silver exchange values. One guy tries to short another by faking a thumbprint on an old tablet. Doesn't work. The seal doesn't match. The attempt earns him an ancient equivalent of a written warning and a dirty look. You settle near the exit as Ibisen passes by again. He's smiling now. Deals made, records sealed. For a man who just spent 2 weeks sleeping beside camels, he walks like a king. You tip your head to the scribes whose dusty fingers have ensured this trade won't vanish into rumor. It's all been logged, tracked, and sealed away until the next caravan rolls in. And just like that, commerce continues. Not with credit cards, not with apps, but with clay. The marketplace fades behind you, swallowed by the night, and the soft clatter of ledgers being tucked away like sacred relics. But the business of proof doesn't end when the sun sets. You turn down a quieter street where the buildings grow taller, and the air takes on the perfume of baked earth, old ink, and sweaty nervousness. You've reached the neighborhood of the scribes. Here in the back rooms of mud brick homes and private record halls, a different kind of game is played. Less shouting, more paranoia. Less grain, more power. Because if the Mesopotamian world runs on receipts, then this is where those receipts become weapons. You step through a low doorway into a scribe's private office. It's dimly lit by a small oil lamp, and the air is thick with damp clay and ameti, tension. At the center of the room sits a man hunched over a flat surface, slowly rolling a cylinder seal across a fresh tablet. The seal's design is intricate lines, symbols a lion chasing a deer. You watch it unfurl like a miniature tapestry pressed into earth. This, you realize, is the Mesopotamian signature. Not a scribble of a name, not a fingerprint, but an engraved work of art that only one person possesses, the seal. You lean in closer. The seal is carved from serpentine stone, smooth and cool. The process of making one takes weeks, sometimes months, with artisans carefully etching every line in reverse so it rolls out perfectly in clay. No pressure. Right? The scribe finishes the impression and turns to you. He's working on a legal dispute. Someone is being accused of modifying a receipt after the fact. A trader claims he returned 10 jars of oil, but the original tablet only says 5. Now both sides have presented sealed tablets, and the seals don't match. Forgery. Historians still argue whether cylinder seals were reliable enough to serve as sole evidence in court, or if they were just part of a larger bundle of proof. But in this world, a mismatched seal is basically a smoking gun. You watch the scribe compare the tablets. One seal rolls clean. The other has subtle irregularities, too sharp, too shallow, a lion's paw. That's just a bit off. That's the giveaway. Someone tried to copy the seal by hand, and it's just not right. It's genius and tragic at the same time. A system so advanced it could be forged, and so simple it often couldn't tell. You lean back against the wall. On a nearby shelf sit dozens of seals in storage. Each is unique, some wrapped in cloth, some mounted on rings to be worn like a badge of office. There's even a child-sized seal shaped like a tiny fish. Practice, probably. Or someone's way of making "I'm 6 and this is mine" legally binding. One scribe tells you a story about a man who had two seals. One public, one secret. He used the second for shady deals and blamed imposters if they were ever discovered. Fringe scholars claim there were underground networks of seal makers working in the shadows. Others say that's fantasy. You quietly root for the underground network. Drama is more fun. Here's a fun tidbit. Some seals weren't even used by humans. High-ranking gods had their own official seals rolled out by temple officials to authorize blessings. You imagine a bored priest muttering, "This grain came from Enlil, now sign here." Back in the scribe's chamber, you examine another tablet. It's blank except for a series of small, precise dots along the edge. A secret code. A scribe's shorthand. Historians are still scratching their heads. But the best theory? It's a training slate, like a handwriting workbook except baked in a kiln. Outside, you hear the soft bleating of goats and the distant thunk of a tablet being dropped. Again, you're ushered into another room, a legal archive. It's stacked with clay records of court cases, property disputes, and custody arrangements. You find one that's particularly spicy, a neighbor accusing another of sorcery via spoil barley. The resolution: return of the barley and 3 public apologies. And of course, 2 sealed tablets verifying both. As you scan the cases, you realize just how powerful these seals were. They weren't just about identity, they were about intent. If someone rolled their seal across a tablet, it meant "I agree. I was there. I can't deny it later." In a world without pens, that spiral of carved stone was the closest thing to accountability, and people hated being held accountable. You step outside into the cool night. Stars begin to shimmer above the dark rooftops. A young apprentice scurries past you, clutching a box filled with tiny clay rolls, seals in training. He drops one, swears. You help him gather them. They're warm from his hands and faintly sticky, still fresh. As you hand one back, you catch your reflection in the glossy stone surface. You wonder, what would your seal look like? What image would you carve into eternity? A lion. A quill. A half-eaten fig. The night deepens, the city stills. Somewhere a judge is preparing to hear the next day's disputes. Somewhere a merchant is rehearsing a lie. But here in this quiet hallway between chambers of trust and trickery, the air holds its breath, because in ancient Mesopotamia, the truth was never shouted. It was pressed. You wake, or more accurately, you drift into the next morning inside a dusty corner of a small sunlit room. Your eyes adjust to rows of tablets lined like loaves of bread, each stamped, dried, and waiting. It's quieter here. Less shouting, more precision. This isn't a temple, a courthouse, or a merchant's booth. This is a shipping office. And in front of you sits something new, a portable receipt. It's a humble-looking tablet no larger than your hand, roughly oval and curved just slightly at the edges, like someone once tried to pocket it but forgot. Mesopotamian pants didn't have pockets. You pick it up. It's heavy for its size, denser than it looks. The wedge marks are crisp and deeply set. Someone wanted this receipt to last. You run your finger across the symbols. Numbers, names. Quantities. This one documents the transfer of 1 bolt of dyed wool, 2 jars of cedar oil, and a bracelet of electrum. Fancy. The date is scrawled at the top along with 2 seals, one from the sender, one from the receiver. It's not just a receipt, it's a travel log, a contract, and a warning label all in one. These tablets were made to move. Couriers tucked them in satchels or slings, delivering proof from one city to another. You can imagine the conversations. "I swear I paid the tax in Kish." Here's the tablet, and then the poor official holding it, squinting at the seal like, Why does this look like your cousin's? Historians still argue whether these mini tablets were used mostly for intercity trade or for mobile tax collection, but either way they were revolutionary. For the first time, proof could travel. Accountability wasn't tied to a temple archive, it had legs. You're shown another tablet thinner and flatter, baked harder than the last. This one is wrapped in a reed pouch sealed with a lump of clay, impressed with a seal you've seen before. You tilt your head. Is it waterproof? That's the fringe theory that some receipts were wrapped and oiled to protect them from rain river spray or camel slobber. Not proven, but not impossible. And let's be honest, Mesopotamian messengers needed all the help they could get. A scribe nearby lays out his toolkit. He's working on a triplicate set 3 identical tablets. One for the sender, one for the receiver, one for temple records. You watch him copy the same details 3 times like a tired human photocopier with sore fingers and existential dread. He glances at you and sighs. Easier than resolving disputes later. You nod. He's not wrong. You're drawn to a wall niche where rejected tablets pile like failed resumes. Some cracked, others smudged, a few simply wrong. Too many marks, not enough space. One poor soul forgot to leave room for the seal. Rookie mistake. You examine one fragment that shows just the corner of a seal. A palm tree, maybe a bird. It's hard to tell. That's the downside of portable receipts, easier to lose damage or fake. Still, they caught on like wildfire. And here's your quirky fact. Some tablets were shaped like cones or prisms to deter tampering. If someone shaved a line off a flat tablet, it might go unnoticed. But mess with a cone, it breaks. Genius. Inconvenient, but genius. You walk to a courier stall near the city gate. A young man is double-checking his satchel, 6 tablets each wrapped in cloth. One tablet slips out and lands with a solid thunk. He winces. The sender slaps his arm and mutters something about how many tablets you've broken this week. You lean down to peek. It's intact. Barely. The courier tucks it back in with exaggerated care. He'll carry those tablets across miles of mud heat and bored bandits who will not care that it's a return policy. You step back into the office where a merchant is nervously chewing on his sleeve. He handed his goods to the wrong porter yesterday and now the receipt's gone. Or maybe he lost it. Either way, no proof means no refund. The scribe shrugs. No tablet, no trust. Another man storms in waving a broken fragment. Half a seal, some numbers, and one line that might say received. The scribe squints. This says 10 jars. You only brought 8. A dramatic sigh. Another dispute. Another blank tablet pulled down from the shelf. You feel a strange sympathy. Imagine explaining to a temple official that your payment was lost in the mail. And the mail was a donkey who sat on the tablet. But even so, the system works. Trade flourishes. Trust, while always slightly cracked, mostly holds. Because the Mesopotamians didn't just invent receipts, they invented portable trust. You pass a young apprentice smoothing a fresh tablet. He hums as he works gently, pressing wedge after wedge into the surface. You ask what he's recording. He shrugs. 2 jars of honey wine. Going to Ur. Buyer wants proof. Of course they do. The sun tilts westward and you follow the courier out toward the road. His donkey waits patiently, already loaded with goods and grief. He mounts up tablets secured in their sling. You wave. He doesn't see you. He's already rehearsing how to explain a cracked receipt to someone much scarier than a scribe. And with a jangle of reins and the soft creak of leather, he rides off, carrying 3 receipts. 1 prayer and about a 70% chance of making it before something leaks. You watch until the dust swallows him. Proof, after all, must travel. The sun is dipped behind the rooftops now, and the blue of evening folds gently over the city. You stroll through narrow alleyways that snake between the homes of artisans, traders, and city workers. Clay dust coats your feet, your thoughts wander, and then there it is. A sound you hadn't expected, someone crying over a stylus. You peer into a small courtyard. A boy, maybe 10 or 11, sits slumped beside a stone bench. His stylus lies snapped in half beside him, its jagged edge digging into the dirt like a tiny broken spear. His tablet smeared into unreadable mush. You sigh, step forward, and instantly understand you've stumbled into the world of scribal school. A strict-looking instructor leans over the boy, sighing. Again he says, not angry, just resigned. You recognize the tone. A man who's seen hundreds of styluses break and students cry and barley quotas get misspelled into accidental death curses. This school isn't like the priestly archives or the merchant offices. It's gritty, chaotic, and full of elbow grease. The floor is scattered with broken tablets. The walls are etched with faded wedge marks, practice strokes carved by generations of tired hands. You sit on a corner step and take it all in. Here, young boys, usually sons of officials, scribes, or wealthy traders, begin their long, painful climb toward becoming masters of cuneiform. Not by writing poetry, not by reading myths, but by copying over lists. Lists of signs, lists of numbers, lists of lists. Your fun historical fact. The most common student tablet ever found contains the word Q. That's it, repeated again and again, hundreds of times. Coo, 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 coo. You can feel the ancient boredom in every stroke. And yet, this is where it begins. You watch as another student smooths fresh clay and carefully writes the sign for sheep. It looks nothing like a sheep, but it's good enough. He nods in satisfaction. His instructor does not. A pile of practice tablets rests in a basket nearby. You lift one. It contains a poem. Or maybe just a very fancy inventory. Hard to tell, but then, aha, a smudge near the bottom followed by a symbol that roughly translates to Rito. You wince on their behalf. Historians still argue whether scribal schools were formal institutions or just glorified apprenticeships run by grumpy fathers. Either way, the curriculum was brutal. Students had to memorize hundreds of signs, some phonetic, some pictographic, all confusing. And mistakes weren't just frowned upon, they were baked in literally. You mess up a tablet, that error could live forever. A teacher barks from the far side of the room. Someone spelled barley like donkey, again groans follow. You quietly set the smudged tablet back in its place. A boy recites aloud, voice flat, 1 shekel equals 60 jin. 1 sila equals 1 liter. The god Enlil receives 2 jars. You blink. It's half prayer, half spreadsheet. And this is just lesson 1. You're told that older students eventually graduate to more important tasks, contracts, inventory, logs, temple reports. But first, they spend years copying model texts over and over. You imagine the ancient version of a motivational poster on the wall, one stroke at a time. Quirky detail. Some student tablets were actually double-sided with the teacher's model on one side and the student's imitation on the other. Ancient homework graded in real time. You pick one up. The back is perfect. The front, well, let's say someone still needed tutoring. You move to the rear courtyard where a few students practice rolling seals. It's harder than it looks. The tablet has to be the right dampness, the angle exact, and the pressure even. One boy presses too hard and leaves a blob. Another rolls too quickly, smearing the design into oblivion. The instructor snorts. If you can't roll a seal, you can't roll into court. There's a joke hidden in that one, maybe. You notice one corner of the courtyard has smaller clay fragments bite-sized. Practice pieces. Kids use them to test signs before committing to the full tablet. One bears a half-drawn sign for ox, another looks like a swear word. You pretend not to notice. Evening settles in deeper. A few boys yawn. One dozes off face first into his practice slate. No one bothers him, everyone's done that once. You hear quiet muttering nearby. A boy is working late copying a complex legal formula. If a man rents a boat and the boat sinks, you don't catch the rest. Maybe because even in ancient times, nobody liked word problems. You sit with him watching the stylus flick and press. His hands are caked in clay. His eyes rimmed with sleep. But he's focused, determined. This isn't just writing, it's access, power. To be a scribe is to be respected, feared even. And for someone like him, that means everything. You look up at the stars blinking through a narrow skylight. Somewhere out there, someone just dropped a tablet and cursed. Somewhere else, a scribe is being paid in barley for translating a list of missing goats. And here this boy shapes the future one wedge at a time. Morning creeps in on padded feet and the school slowly empties. Students trudge home with clay-smeared tunics and arms sore from yesterday's mistakes. You follow the narrow alleys out toward the market again, expecting more lists, more rations, more standard temple offerings. But today something's different. You spot a man waving a tablet like it's a winning lottery ticket. A crowd gathers. He's shouting about a deal, something about oil futures. You edge closer. Turns out he's not selling oil. He's selling the right to collect oil from a delivery that hasn't arrived yet. Wait, hold up. Did Mesopotamians just invent credit? You squint at the tablet in his hand. It's small, neat, baked hard. On it, a line of symbols indicates that the bearer is entitled to 1 full barrel of sesame oil to be delivered in 2 weeks by a merchant from Sippar. The seal is legit. The scribe's mark is clean, and the man holding it, he's not the merchant. He's just the current owner of the claim. You're witnessing a clay gift card, a promissory note, an IOU with a cylinder seal and a very serious sense of self-worth. Historians still argue whether this counts as true money or just a flexible kind of voucher system, but either way it worked. People traded these receipts like commodities, couldn't pay in grain hand over a barley token. No silver today. Here's a clay chit for 2 cows due next week. Suddenly, the marketplace isn't just noise and smells. It's fluid. Receipt paper becomes currency. Ownership shifts on the strength of scribbles baked into mud. A eating woman at a vendor stall flashes a palm-sized tablet and exchanges it for a woven basket and a smile. No arguing, no counting out silver rings. Just trust codified, sealed, and sun-dried. You follow her as she winds through the stall's tablet still in hand. She stops at another booth and retrades it this time for 3 jugs of beer. The vendor glances at the tablet, nods, and pockets it in a cloth bag with others. That tablet has now changed hands 3 times. You imagine it like a heat map glowing with fingerprints and shifting ownership. Proof of value without actual goods in tow. Here's a quirky find. Some receipts were shaped like tiny domes or cones small enough to wear on a necklace or string to your belt. That's right. Clay jewelry, but for finance. You wander into a side alley where a group of older men sip something murky and argue over interest rates. One of them pulls out a thin tablet, waves it, and declares, "He owes me 5 shekels worth of grain by the next moon or I get the field." The others nod. It's not a threat, it's a clause. Nearby, a scribe records a livestock debt. 2 oxen due in spring. The borrower signs seal pressed. If the debt isn't repaid, the lender gets the tools and the calf. Harsh. Maybe. But it's all right there in the receipt. No surprises. Just clauses written so clearly even a goat could enforce them. Assuming it could read. You ask a trader about repayment defaults. He shrugs. If they can't pay, we keep the tablet and file a complaint. He gestures to a battered crate marked with a seal that reads, "Disputes." It's half full. You lift a tablet from the box. It's marked redeemed. The debt was paid. Goods delivered. Agreement honored. The corner bears a new wedge and X of sorts signaling closure. You smile. Closure is rare in history, but not always. You're shown a locked clay envelope. Inside, another tablet. Probably a loan or repayment receipt. The outer shell is sealed. To open it is to break it. It's the ancient version of a tamper-evident package. And once opened, it loses official status unless both parties agree. Portable, verifiable, secure. Sound familiar? At a nearby bench, two scribes play a game with discarded chits, flipping them, stacking them, betting on the outcome. You laugh. Even receipts find second lives. You wonder if a 4,000-year-old IOU ever became a child's toy, or a building block, or, let's be honest, a very boring skipping stone. You sit on the low wall of a fishmonger's stall. Behind you, a woman trades a tablet marked wheat owed from Field 37 for 3 pots. A man follows, offering a debt note in exchange for a bronze blade. These aren't just receipts anymore, they're currency. They're promises backed not by banks, but by trust clay and the fear of getting caught. Historians love to debate, was this money not quite, but was it monetary? Absolutely. It could move. Be traded, be stolen, be faked, and yes, be taxed. At a government kiosk nearby, a bored-looking scribe collects receipts of payment from townsfolk. They arrive one by one, drop off tablets, receive seals of confirmation, and walk away lighter in spirit but not in taxes. A temple clerk shows you a master tablet, dozens of tiny entries, like spreadsheet cells in cuneiform. Each one tracks a payment made with a receipt. You blink. That's a receipt for a receipt. Meta. The sun slants low again, and the wind picks up dust and the scent of roasted onions. Somewhere behind you, a man drops his tablet in a puddle and screams. You don't blame him. That was probably his whole net worth. You turn back one last time to the square where hundreds of people go about their day. Not with coins, not with passwords, but with hardened lumps of clay that say, I promise. And somehow, in this ancient world, that's enough. Evening slips in like a whisper, and with it comes a gust of wind off the Euphrates, cool, muddy, and carrying the scent of wet reeds and old fish. You follow it to the riverbank, where the city's beating heart meets the source of both life and chaos. It's quiet now. Boats bob in the shallows. The last grain sacks are being hauled off planks by lantern light. But behind the calm is a problem, ancient and eternal. Flood season is coming. You find yourself near the city's tax office, a squat mud brick structure pressed close to the river's edge. Inside, it's frantic. Scribes dart between shelves, pulling tablets, rechecking entries, slapping palm to forehead when they realize that once again, they forgot to account for flood loss in Field 12B. The mood-controlled panic. Because if you think taxes are complicated now, try calculating annual grain levies when half your fields are underwater by spring. A clerk passes you cradling a stack of drying tablets like they're newborns. You trail behind him and catch a glimpse. Inventory reports, field measurements, complaints from farmers, and yes, receipts. Always receipts. One reads, 2 measures barley owed after harvest, partial flood loss expected. It's marked with a cautious seal and a damp thumbprint. You can almost hear the subtext. Please don't send soldiers. Historians still argue how reliable these seasonal tax logs were. Some suggest the scribes inflated numbers to impress higher officials. Others believe local governors fudged them in the opposite direction to protect their farmers. Either way, receipts became a political tool. You duck into the archive room where the walls are stacked with cubbies, each packed with tablets organized by name, date, and location. This is where the records live. It smells of damp earth and cold ash. You spot a pile labeled pending review. One is cracked, another is marked with a faint star. Possibly a note to double-check. Possibly just someone doodling. Who knows? A scribe tells you they've started duplicating all tablets from the low shelves too close to the flood line. You ask how often floods reach this high. He stares blankly and says once. You decide not to press. Here's a quirky bit. Some tablets were stored in sealed jars. Mini archives meant to float or survive soaking. Not always effective, but clever. You imagine some poor official wading through river sludge, fishing out a soggy pot of unpaid tax records, and muttering, "Why me?" Outside, the wind picks up. The river sloshes against the quay. A boy races by with an armful of tablets wrapped in cloth. You follow him to a raised platform where a fire smolders inside a clay kiln. He's here to bake them. This is where things get interesting. Unbaked tablets were fine for everyday use, easy to edit, lightweight relatively, but when things mattered, contracts, legal rulings, high-value receipts, they were fired, hardened, made permanent, and also somewhat ironically more fragile. The boy sets the tablets inside the kiln with practiced hands. The fire crackles, the clay darkens. Time slows. You sit nearby watching the flickering light reflect off stacks of future history. Most will survive the fire, some won't. But once baked, they'll be nearly immortal, fireproof, waterproof, almost future-proof. And here's your fun detail: some cities intentionally burn their archives during enemy invasions, not to destroy, but to preserve. A baked tablet could survive looting, flood, or fire far better than any scroll. In one case, a library that caught fire in war ended up saving thousands of clay records by accidentally firing them in the blaze. You imagine a scribe, half panicked, half inspired, yelling, "Throw them in the hearth," while the enemy stormed the gates. Inside the tax office, things are no less dramatic. A farmer pleads for an extension. His fields flooded early and his barley sprouted mold. The clerk checks his previous receipts. They match. He shrugs. "You'll still owe next season." The farmer sighs. A scribe logs it all. The request, the refusal, the agreed-upon payment delay. He seals it, dries. It adds it to a growing stack of flood adjustments. Bureaucracy meet Mother Nature. You step out again into the dusk. River frogs croak in the distance. The city flickers with torchlight. Above you, the stars begin to spill out one by one, as if counted by the same meticulous hands that etched barley tallies into wet clay. A caravan of donkeys arrives late, their cargo splattered in mud. The porter waves a tablet frantically, insisting this counts as delivered. The receiving clerk sighs, writes a note about condition upon arrival, and files it with a noise that sounds a lot like "I should have been a potter." You walk the riverbank as the city hums and drips around you. Somewhere, water laps at the foot of a storage vault. Inside, scribes debate whether the newest batch of tablets should be fired or not. "We can always recopy," someone says. "Unless we can't," says another. And you, wandering through this damp, dusty bureaucracy, realize something strange. Even floods couldn't wash away the receipts. Because Mesopotamia didn't just store grain, wool, and fish, it stored memory, carefully etched, sealed, stacked, and if necessary, baked into eternity. You're jolted awake or deeper into the dream by the smell of smoke, not from cook fires or ritual incense. This is sharper, darker. The scent of panic. You round a corner and find chaos. The palace district is a blur of shouting dust and the clang of wooden doors being bolted shut. You squint through the haze and realize what's happening. The city is under threat. Enemy forces, perhaps. Maybe just rumors. But whatever it is, the scribes aren't taking chances. You follow the commotion into the rear quarter of the palace, a place not often visited by merchants or taxmen. This is the archive wing, and it is alive with urgency. Scribes move in coordinated frenzy. Arms loaded with tablets, faces slick with sweat, their sandals scraping against the floor as they dart between rooms. You grab a handful of tablets from a teetering stack before they fall, earning a quick nod of thanks from a girl who can't be more than 13. Her arms are trembling. The slab she carries is nearly her size. This is no drill. The tablets are being moved to the kiln room. You blink. This isn't about saving them from fire. It's about using fire. You slip inside the baking chamber. Kilns roar like desert dragons, their bellies glowing orange with heat. Tablets are being slid into place with long paddles, one after another, receipts, ledgers, contracts, laws, reports, all of it. Anything that matters. You recognize one marked with the seal of the king's accountant. It's an audit of temple grain reserves from last season. Not worth dying for, you think. But someone disagrees. It disappears into the heat. This, you realize, is how history survives. Not by accident, by intention. The scribes aren't fleeing with tablets strapped to their backs. They're firing them, locking the city's memory in clay, turning paperwork into ceramic, because if the palace burns, if the invaders ransack, at least these will remain. Ash-covered, cracked, but legible. Historians still argue whether this practice was common policy or a desperate improvisation. But we know it happened. Countless fired tablets have been uncovered from ruined cities. Libraries turned kilns in the chaos of war. You stand by the kiln and feel the heat press into your skin. A boy beside you slides in a clay envelope still sealed. Inside, you know, is a contract, maybe even a will. Once it's fired, it can never be opened again without breaking the outer shell. You whisper, "You sure?" He nods. Better burned than gone. A strange mantra, but it fits. In the next room, tablets are being wrapped in damp cloth before baking. A fringe theory says this was to reduce cracking. Maybe it worked, maybe not. Either way, they're trying. Outside, guards shout orders. The city's western gate has been barred. Some civilians are evacuating. But here the scribes press on. One scribe, older stooped, carries a tray marked with little wedge signs. You peer closer. It's a log of livestock exchanges 10 years' worth. He hesitates by the kiln, then sighs and slides them in. You can almost hear him thinking, "They'll never believe me without proof." Quirky detail. Some tablets were placed in kiln jars, large ceramic containers filled with layers of receipts, a time capsule of transactions. You find one half buried near the kiln. The outside is marked record of years 12 to 18. If it survives tonight, it might survive forever. You spot a tablet resting beside the kiln untouched. It's odd, clean, dry, no seal. You flip it over, nothing. A blank. You're about to set it aside when a young scribe snatches it. "Emergency decree," he says, "hasn't been written yet." He kneels, stylus in hand, and begins to scratch. The words come fast: food ration rules, curfew instructions, the king's assurance that the gods will preserve us. You bite your tongue. If only receipts could stop arrows. But receipts at least can outlive arrows. Suddenly, shouting erupts outside. Someone's been seen at the outer wall. A guard runs past. The scribes stiffen, but they keep working. No one flees. And then silence. Not peace. Just the deep, still breath of a city waiting to see what happens next. You remain in the kiln room where the fire keeps roaring and the scribes keep feeding it. Not in fear, but in defiance. Every tablet they slide into the blaze is a choice. We were here. We remembered. We mattered. You glance at the wall. Dozens more tablets remain. Some will make it into the fire. Some won't. Some will be shattered. Others buried. But a few, just a few, will one day be uncovered. Brushed clean by curious hands. Translated, preserved, wondered at. And perhaps even now, someone will whisper the same quiet awe. They recorded everything. The scribes wipe their foreheads. The kiln crackles. The fire holds. And the city breathes. The tension from the palace hangs in the air long after the shouting fades. You drift quietly through the dawn mist toward a quieter quarter of the city, the royal compound where servants move like shadows and the walls are polished smoother than anything you've seen. This isn't just the seat of power. It's the nerve center of bureaucracy. Welcome to the court of Shulgi, king of Ur, ruler, God on earth. And if the scribes are to be believed, the most detail-oriented micromanager Mesopotamia ever produced. You pass through a shaded corridor where tablets line the walls, not like decoration but like policy. Grain quotas, distribution plans, royal decrees on how many bricks should be made on Tuesdays. You raise an eyebrow. Was this man building an empire or running a very elaborate spreadsheet? Inside the main hall, a ring of scribes sits on cushioned mats, tablets, arranged in spirals around them like petals. A master scribe dictates, "Write this, let no barley leave the temple without triple notation," and dual seal verification. A younger scribe sighs, muttering again before dutifully pressing his stylus into clay. You're told that under Shulgi's reign, the administrative machine reached new levels of obsession. His officials recorded everything: how long workers took to dig canals, how many sheep died in transit, even the labor hours of temple bakers. If it moved, breathed, or was vaguely taxable, it went on a tablet. Historians still argue whether Shulgi's system made the kingdom thrive or collapse under its own paperwork. But no one doubts the sheer scale of it. You see it now, crates and shelves of receipts marked with the royal seal, each one a single thread in the tightly woven net of state control. You walk past a line of civil servants waiting to submit their records. One man clutches a delivery note for timber. Another has 3 short tablets detailing ox cart repairs. A woman presents a corrected salary log because, as she quietly confesses, we double paid the thatch boys again. And yes, of course, Shulgi has auditors. A whole department dedicated to cross-checking receipts, recalculating taxes, and investigating shortages. You peek into a room where one scribe has 3 tablets open at once comparing numbers. His muttering sounds like a priest in crisis. 20 sacks in, 16 out. Where's the barley? Where is it? Quirky side note. Shulgi issued a proclamation requiring clarity of seal on all transactions involving more than 1 gur of barley. That's about 300 liters. The rule: if the seal's blurry, the receipt is void. Yes, he built bureaucratic font standards into the law. You chuckle, and then pause. Because in the next room, a wall-sized tablet hangs from pegs like a menu board. It's not a list of food. It's the labor roster for an entire construction team. Each name, each day, each wage, all pressed into stone-hard clay. And there it is, your mainstream historical fact. The Erde III administrative system credited to Shulgi was so detailed and organized that modern scholars have been able to reconstruct entire workforces from the surviving receipts. Some cities were run like corporations with regional branches, daily reports, and supply chain logs. You pass a man delivering a message from the provinces. His tablet is sealed, stamped, and carried in a reed-lined box. The scribe examines the seal under a lamp, then cracks the box open like an archaeologist opening a time capsule. Silver tax receipts from Nippur, he says, nodding. Only 3 weeks late. The courier winces. You're led into the royal archive, cool, dim, and bone quiet. Here the tablets are stacked by decade. A scribe tells you these are not for daily use. These are for history. He gestures to one particularly worn tablet. First recorded mention of Canal Project New River. You lean in. It's brief, formal, almost dry. But it launched a decades-long irrigation system still referenced generations later. This isn't just admin, this is legacy. A whispered voice nearby catches your ear. 2 scribes are arguing over a discrepancy. A receipt from a merchant states 10 wheels delivered, but the warehouse record says 9. They can't reconcile the numbers. One of them suggests Shulgi will want a full inquiry. You back away slowly. The king himself. No, you won't see him today. Shulgi rarely appears in the flesh, but his words echo in every chamber. His policies shape every list. His seal, crisp, round, and unmistakable, crowns nearly every tablet in the building. There's one carved tablet near the entrance to the archive. Not a receipt. A poem. An ode to Shulgi's wisdom, his justice, and, oddly, his talent at mathematics. You realize something: this king didn't just rule through strength. He ruled through paperwork. He made bureaucracy sacred. Outside the royal hall, the wind picks up rustling through a fig tree. A young boy delivers a fresh tablet marked Brick Count East Wall Week 17. The archivist nods and sets it gently on a shelf. And just like that, a number becomes a relic. A moment of labor becomes memory, because under Shulgi to rule was to record. You slip quietly out of the royal quarter, the king's obsessive seal-checked world echoing in your ears. The city feels different now, quieter perhaps. Not because it's grown still, but because you've finally heard its true voice clay under stylus lines and dust and stories pressed into permanence. You drift to the city's edge where the walls stretch toward the horizon and the air smells like dry reeds and distant smoke. From up here, you can see the land beyond the patchwork of fields, the glimmer of canals, the hazy outline of another city far off in the shimmering light. And suddenly it hits you, all of this empire, this world runs on receipts. You turn back and make your way to a regional governor's office just past the city gate. This one's far from the temples and royal records. No incense here, no gold leaf on the walls. Just functional brick rows of benches and exhausted men arguing over fish deliveries. Inside, a wide table is covered with hardened clay tablets. Some are old, some are fresh. All of them have the same tired look, like they've been read, reread, dropped, disputed, and occasionally thrown at someone's head. One scribe shows you the latest edition. A delivery log for military supplies, arrows, shields, dried meat, and interestingly, 4 copies of a royal proclamation regarding boot maintenance. Apparently, improper sandals lead to rebellion. You nod solemnly. You sit near a woman scratching out a record of grain owed by tenant farmers. Each line lists the landowner, the laborer, the harvest amount, and the expected tax. But then something else, an odd wedge mark with a symbol that means delay. You ask. Drought, she replies. You ask how she knows. She pulls another tablet, meteorological logs. Yes, Mesopotamians recorded weather to explain production shortfalls. Not just rain and sun, but also eclipses, wind, and dreams. If it might impact barley, it went on a tablet. Historians still argue whether these climate logs were scientific or ritualistic, but either way they got archived. Because if someone showed up with half a harvest, they'd better have proof the gods were upset. Here's your quirky bit. Sometimes scribes used poetic language in official logs. One tablet about a failed fish shipment blames the mood of the river and the envy of Enki, which frankly is a lot more elegant than logistical delay. You're shown a stack of disputed entries tablets. These are receipts that don't match up, numbers that disagree, seals that are smudged, deliveries that didn't quite deliver. Each one has been reviewed, annotated, and, if necessary, canceled. Some bear a single harsh wedge across the surface like a line through a name. Null. One scribe tells you about a man who claimed a temple still owed him a sack of grain from 12 years ago. He brought the receipt. It was cracked, smudged, but still legible. They paid him. Grudgingly. That's the thing about this system, it worked not perfectly but reliably, and not just in one city, across empires. You travel with a courier now, riding out across the plain toward a smaller town. He carries a wrapped package of tablets, 6 in total from 6 different cities. Marriage records, trade contracts. One is a temple dispute over fishing rights. Another is a list of the temple musicians and their wages. Each city uses the same signs, the same formats, the same obsession with seals. This is how the Mesopotamians shaped empires, not just with soldiers or bricks, but with systems. The way a contract made in Lagash could be honored in Ur. The way a seal recognized in Nippur meant something in Larsa. The receipt became the glue of trust, the backbone of policy, the string that tied cities together even when politics or weather or war tried to rip them apart. You reach a border town. The local governor is reviewing land leases. One tablet catches your eye. It's old, older than the others, and marked with a deep groove. Not damage. A change in policy. A tax forgiveness signed off by a provincial king whose name you don't recognize. The scribe explains sometimes the tablets outlast the rulers. When the king dies, the policy changes, but the receipt remains. Sometimes it's honored, sometimes not, but always it's there. You see it again and again, receipts, controlling inheritance disputes, food rations during famine, even punishment decrees. One tablet logs a fine for selling spoiled fish at market, 2 days' worth of barley, and public apology at Gate Square. Harsh but efficient. You sit beside a stack labeled Temple Allocations. The scribes are exhausted. The last shipment went missing. The temple swears it was delivered. The supplier insists it wasn't. The resolution. A cross-check of every receipt issued that month. It takes hours, but eventually the truth emerges, a double entry by a novice scribe. Honest mistake. He's fined. The record is corrected, the receipt amended. And life goes on. You walk outside again, the wind rising. You realize something profound. Mesopotamians didn't just write history. They lived by it. Every tablet was a tiny monument to shared agreement, to the idea that what mattered could and should be recorded. Not for poetry, not for memory, but for continuity. A goat bleats nearby. A boy leads it toward the market, a tablet tucked into the sash at his side. You imagine the symbols etched, their ownership, origin, trade agreement. He's 10. Already part of the system. And tomorrow, someone will write that goat's name down. The wind has shifted again. You're back where it began, in the heart of the city, where clay dust clings to everything like memory. The scribes have gone quiet for the evening. The kilns cooled to ash, and the last streaks of orange have faded from the rooftops. All around you, the records of 1,000 small lives hum softly beneath the silence. You don't hear them, but you feel them. And tonight you're ready to follow them forward. You sit beside a merchant stall long since closed, watching a scribe tuck away a final tablet into a reed-wrapped crate. His hands are slow, deliberate. You ask him what's inside. Shipment. Manifest, he says. Barley wool, 2 crates of dried garlic, headed for Babylon. You nod. But it's more than just food. It's a thread. This little tablet wedged between layers of straw will roll along in an ox cart across city lines. Through shifting politics, past bandits and bureaucracy, and land in someone else's hands. A quiet whisper of truth far from where it was born. The scribe seals the crate. It'll get there, he says, more to himself than to you. And you realize, looking around, that receipts weren't just proof of delivery. They were proof of existence. They said, we were here, we did this, we remembered. You trace your steps through the streets once more. Past the scribal schools where boys carved sheep and barley into mud like their lives depended on it, because they kind of did. Past the market where receipts were exchanged like currency. Past the temple where the gods required paperwork just to bless a goat. You even pass a tiny pottery shop where someone's written today's sales on a scrap of clay barely the size of your palm. It's crooked, sloppy, smudged, but it exists. And tomorrow it will be added to the growing archive of This Is What We Did. Quirky detail to leave you with. In some ruined cities, archaeologists have found tablets used as building materials. Crushed receipts stuffed into walls, floors, even benches. Bureaucracy turned to brick. Proof turned into foundation. You don't know whether to laugh or cry. And then you blink and the city shifts. Now you're in a later time. A scroll curls beneath your fingers, papyrus, smooth and light. A Roman tax record, neat and crisp. Then parchment. A ledger in medieval France, hand-copied in ink that smells like iron and vinegar. Then paper. A merchant's receipt from 1762, faded and brittle. And finally, thermal paper spat out from a register, curled at the edge, marked with a purchase you barely remember making. Each one the same whisper. Here, proof, memory. The scribes of Mesopotamia didn't just shape tablets. They shaped the way humans think about trust, trade, and time. Without them, there is no contract, no archive, no history. Just voices lost on the wind. You take a final walk through the clay archives, letting your fingers trail across the edges of time. Here lies a sheep, there a marriage. Here alone, there a life. And as the stars blink back into view and the air stills around you, you let the weight of it settle. Not heavy, just real, just recorded. So now, as the sounds of Mesopotamia fade into quiet, let the noise of the day soften too. Picture yourself standing at the edge of a reed-lined river, the water gentle against your feet, the sky vast and velvet above you. Somewhere in the distance, a frog chirps. A breeze lifts the corner of your tunic. You close your eyes. The scribes are sleeping, now their hands stained with clay and ink, their dreams filled with barley quotas and crooked seals. The kilns have cooled. The goats have stopped arguing, and the last torch has burned down to a flicker. You feel it, don't you? The stillness of a world that trusted its memory to mud. Not to machines, not to lightning-fast code, but to simple hands. Patient marks. Wedges carved with care. Let that rhythm lull you now. Press, flick, pause. Over and over. You're safe here. Wrapped in history's soft hush. The fires are out. The records are stored. The promise has been kept. And though the receipts may crumble and the cities may fall somewhere deep in a museum drawer or buried beneath a ruin, a tablet still waits, holding a name, a number, a moment, still whispering I was here, I mattered, and so do you. So let the air cool around you. Let the weight of time ease from your shoulders, and let the quiet carry you gently into sleep.